Hey friends, Chubby Meeple back here again to recap yet another day at Origins. Today we are going to recap day 3, which was Friday at Origins, and just wanted to kind of walk through again, just a brief coverage, recap of what I did, what I played, who I talked to, who I saw, just kind of the goings on of the day. So we're just going to dive right in. Very first thing that I did when I got to Origins on Friday, day 3, was I hit the Unpub room. For those not familiar with the Unpub room, Origins has a section set off for unpublished games where designers can come in, play test games with fans, with fellow designers, fellow creators, get feedback on what works with the games, what doesn't work with the games. And I had the privilege to sit down with Nick and Carla Kopp of Weird Giraffe Games and play their new title, Stellar Leap. Now, Stellar Leap is a 4X game. Not really true 4X, but it's a space exploration game, deck of cards with some meeples and some tokens that are there that go along with the game. What's really cool about the game, I had a lot of fun with it, first of all, and it's kind of a unique take on the space exploration because the planets that you're exploring are a deck of cards, and you may find planets that can be inhabited and populated. You may find asteroids that can be mined for resources, whether you're mining for food or water or fuel or oxygen. There's different things you do. You're spending that fuel to explore further. You're spending oxygen to be able to send your people to other planets and populate other planets. And you're going to get some in-game scoring with some bonuses for the number of planets you occupy. You also have a secret, kind of a secret objective that you're trying to, that kind of determines your own end game scoring. Very cool little game. I played it, me versus Carla, the main designer on the game. Her husband Nick is also helping out with that. Kind of a unique, I don't really say a relationship, but kind of a unique twist on, my normal reviews and my normal communication with folks. Nick and Carla and Weird Giraffe Games kind of hold a little bit of a special place in my heart because last year at Gen Con, I sat down with Nick and Carla. I actually met them completely unexpectedly playing Between Two Cities. They were a couple people that played the game with me and got to talking with them, ended up leaving Gen Con with a prototype of their first game, Super Hack Override. And that was actually, with the exception of the Gen Con recaps that I put together, Super Hack Override I kind of credit as what birthed the Chubby Meeple, because I had mentioned to them in conversation that I was looking to, I was tossing around the idea of doing a game review blog. Talked with them, played the prototype with them of Super Hack Override. They sent me home with a prototype, and it became, I guess I'm doing this blog thing. And that has since obviously spawned the YouTube channel that you're watching right now. So whenever I get the chance to sit down with Nick and Carla and Weird Giraffe, whether it's just a chit chat with them or whether we're taking a look at a new title, I always jump on that opportunity because, like I said, they kind of hold a special place in my heart. I kind of credit them with kind of giving me that extra little push to do the blog there. So thanks, Nick. Thanks, Carla. If you guys are watching this, Stellar Leap's fantastic. I think you guys have a real hit on your hands there. Looking forward to playing that in the future, and looking forward to the Kickstarter campaign when you launch that. You guys have, like I said, you got a hit on your hands there. So I definitely encourage the folks that are watching this, when you see Stellar Leap hit Kickstarter later this year, definitely check it out. It's a very fun little game, exploration. Carla and I played a 2-player game. We were done in about 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes. That was with teaching there. And there are some other mechanisms that are put in the game to make it a little bit longer of a game if you need to. So definitely encourage you to check out Stellar Leap. After I left the Unpub hall playing Stellar Leap, I shot back over to the exhibit hall and traveled through kind of a series of booths from publishers. Just wanted to kind of demo some games. I had set Friday aside and a little bit of Saturday as well to literally just walk through the exhibit hall, plop down at some booths and demo some games so I could kind of give a little bit of feedback on them here for you and see if there may be something that may spark a fancy that I may want to pick something up down the road to do more of an in-depth deep dive review here on the channel. The first booth I stopped by was Fireside Games, publishers of the popular Panic series, so Castle Panic, Dead Panic, Munchkin Panic, Star Trek Panic. They've got all those Panic games that are there. Castle Panic and all of its expansions are probably what they're most well known for. And they were demoing in their booth a couple of games. They had Kaiju Crush, which is a strategic battle. You're kind of not really area control, but you're going through and you're kind of conquering areas of this city, and you're gaining power that can be used for different things, and kind of staking your claim to different areas of the city and different types of the city as well. So, or different types of tiles. They're there. You've got there's a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors mechanic. So you have, I'm not quite sure what they were, but it's like, the tail beats the legs beat the hand, the claw beats the tail. But then you have the dragon breath that beats everything. Except for if you had played your spiked armor card, that actually beats the dragon breath. So you have the dragon breath that beats the 3 main attacks that all have kind of a rock, paper, scissors thing going on. Any of those attacks beat the spikes, but the spikes can defend against and keep you from losing against the dragon breath. So it's a very cool little mechanic, a new take on, not really a new take, but an expanded take on the rock, paper, scissors mechanic. So check out Kaiju Crush. That'll be hitting stores later this year from Fireside Games. Also in the booth, I had the opportunity to take a look at Hot Shots, and this is another cooperative game coming out here later this year as well. And Hot Shots sees players take on the role of firefighters who are working to control a forest fire. So you're able to lay down fire breaks. It's got some dice rolling where you're trying to roll dice to match symbols on the specific tiles. Again, there's a tile a kind of a tile laying aspect. It's a modular board that's all hexagonal tiles. The modular board, of course, is going to add some replayability. There's some different player abilities, some kind of asymmetric player powers, if you will. I kind of likened it to almost Flashpoint Fire Rescue. You had some special abilities. Of course, you got your special abilities in Pandemic. So kind of that same kind of feel to it. But what's really cool, they got these really cool little acrylic fire tokens that look really cool on the board. It gives it some nice table presence. But you go through, you're playing, you're rolling dice symbols. You're trying to match, I believe it's 3 out of the 6 symbols on the tile in order to successfully fight the fires on that tile that you're on. But the tiles have the ability to get scorched. There's a deck of cards that controls wind direction and fire intensity. So there's different things that can happen there. And if your fire base ever gets scorched, or I think it's 8 tiles get scorched, everybody loses. So it's another fun little game to check out. I would highly recommend that one if you get the chance to check that out. I then kind of went, little, like I said, going around the exhibit hall, demoing some games. I went over to the booth for Passport Games and got to sit down and play through a full game of Professor Evil and the Citadel of Time. Now, this is from Funforge Games, the company behind Tokaido, and it's going to be distributed in the U.S. by Passport. Here, I believe, is the partnership that they have going on, but it's a Funforge Passport co-publishing there. Sat down and played this, another co-op game. Apparently that was the theme of the day for me, at least in the early part of the day. But Professor Evil and the Citadel of Time, essentially, I kind of refer to it as it's kind of like almost like Scooby-Doo the board game, because you've got this citadel or this big mansion that you're in, and each player, it's a co-op game, and you're basically trying to, the Professor Evil is in this citadel, and he's trying to lock up all these artifacts from across time and steal them for himself, and you're trying to keep them away from Professor Evil. And the way the game works, or the object of the game, is for the players collectively to secure 4 artifacts before the professor can secure 4 of them. And so you're going through and you have to turn off these different traps. The professor set traps up, so there's laser traps and there's saw blade traps and there's different camera traps and locked doors that you have to have, lock traps that are there, and you have to turn off all of a specific type of trap. So if you're looking for a particular, on each of the artifact tiles, there's icons that dictate which traps need to be turned off before you can claim that artifact. So maybe you have to turn off all 4 of the lock traps, all 3 of the saw blades, and both camera traps. You have to get all 3 of those turned off before you can go grab the artifact tile. But you're taking your actions, you're going around. There's some asymmetric player power. Maybe one character's good at manipulating the clock that's in the center of the board, because after every character's turn, that person, that player takes their turn. You then roll dice that determines what the professor is going to do. And so there's 3 dice that get rolled. One of them dictates how the clock in the center of the board is manipulated. There's a little figure that moves around the clock that indicates the professor. And when he meets up with the artifacts, because each artifact has a color assigned to it, when the professor meets up with one of those artifacts, that signifies him claiming that artifact, and kind of giving him a point, if you will. But then the dice also determine where the professor moves. So he'll move, there's a standee on the board that moves the professor around through the Citadel of Time, and he'll move through, and as he moves in, he'll close doors behind him. He'll activate any traps through any rooms that he moves through, so he'll be turning things back on. So you've got a character that's really good at manipulating the clock. You've got a character that's good at manipulating traps. You've got a character that's good at dealing with the locked rooms, unlocking doors. So there's a lot of, some asymmetrical player powers there, but you really do have to work together. When you reach the 15 and the 45-minute marks on the clock, you actually have player powers where you get to flip over and select all the players will flip over their character card, read off what their special ability is, and you have to decide, if there's 4 of you playing, you have to pick one of those 4 powers that gets activated. The other 3 go back dormant. So now you have a power, and then of course when you hit the 45-minute, you get to select another power, and it's basically a once per game power. So once you've activated it and used that power, you don't get to use it again. You kind of flip your card back over. This is a very fun little game. I'm looking forward. I think this is a game that my kids are going to absolutely love, because you just get that little mischief. You're running through, you're jumping around, you're turning off traps, and they're coming back on. You're locking doors behind you. If you're ever in the same space with the professor, he scares you out of the mansion or the Citadel, and you've got to come back in on your next turn. I think my kids are going to love this game. They love playing co-ops. I think it's something I could probably get my girlfriend to sit down and play as well with us, because she likes the co-op stuff. So I think it's going to be a fun. It'll probably be one I'll definitely pick up as soon as I can get my hands on it, because I had a lot of fun playing it. Again, it was about a 45-minute to an hour play time, so the length of time felt right for the weight of the game. So definitely check that out. Again, that's Professor Evil and the Citadel of Time, coming out from Funforge and Passport Game Studios. I also got to look at, I didn't get to play it, unfortunately, but I got to look at, and I kind of stood and observed and watched some people play, Grim Forest, coming out from Druid City Games. Super excited for this game. This is one I backed on Kickstarter, so I will be getting a copy of it. Definitely keep your eyes out on the channel, because once I receive my copy, there will be a review going up of Grim Forest. Very cool little game. You're, one of the 3 little pigs, or I guess it plays up to 4 or 5 players, so it's not really the 3 little pigs. But you're trying to be the first pig to build 3 houses, and that can be 3 straw houses, 3 stick houses, 3 brick houses, 1 of each. It doesn't matter. There's 3 houses that are there, but there's different fairy tale characters that are coming out that are helping you out. You've got fable cards that get played that do different things. You've got friends that you can recruit from the world, so you could pull up Little Red Riding Hood or Robin Hood or Aladdin. There's all kinds of characters that are in this thing, but then you also have to watch out for some of the bad guys from the fairy tales. So the big bad wolf, the wolves in general, there's a dragon, there's a giant that keep you from going to different areas, but you're taking... There's a little bit of a social deduction aspect to it, because if you are, all players are going to play to face down a card, kind of their gather cards is what they're referred to, and you're gathering straw, sticks, and bricks. Then you're using those resources to build your houses. And so there's 3 areas in the middle of the table where you go to collect these resources, and they get restocked at the start of every round. And what happens is you play face down on the table a card that indicates the area you want to go to. So if I want to go into the forest to get some sticks, I play that card down. And if I end up as the only character, the only pig that has gone there to collect those sticks, I get all of the sticks that are there. If 2 of us end up there, we divide them as evenly as possible. Any leftovers remain there for the next round, just get added to the pool. And if all of us end up there, let's say there's 4 of us playing, we divide those resources. Each of us get a quarter of the resources. There's a little bit of social deduction of trying to figure out where my opponents are going, to get the most resources, so I can get the most resources. And then there's also the aspect of those fable cards that get played that allow you to, maybe throw a wolf out there that scares people away and makes them lose resources, or it takes all the resources away, so now there's nothing there for them to collect. So it's a very cool little bit of a social deduction, that does seem to be a little bit of a take that mechanic, maybe more than I was expecting, but I think it looks super fun. I've watched some playthroughs. I know there was a live Twitch stream. Twist Gaming had done a stream, back while the Kickstarter campaign was still going on. Sat down and played through the game, and James Hudson, the designer or the publisher behind the game, with Druid City, was there checking it out. This is a game by Tim Eisner. Everybody talks about James Hudson with the game. Tim Eisner is the designer behind the game. It's odd whenever I hear people talk about Grim Forest. I was like, oh, it's James Hudson. It's Tim Eisner. James is there. James is the publisher on this from Druid City Games. He's doing a hell of a job marketing this thing. It's super exciting. I'm glad I got to take a look at it and watch some playthrough there. That Druid City didn't have a booth, but the folks at Skybound, who are going to be handling a lot of the distribution, a lot of the here in the US, were demoing it at their booth alongside their games of Super Fight and Red Flags, Blank Mary Kill, some of the card games that they have, party style card games that they publish. But they had Grim Forest there. I got to check that out. So if you've not looked at Grim Forest at all, definitely I encourage you to check that out. Druid City Games. You could probably jump over to the Kickstarter page. I don't know that they're doing late pledges, but at least get a look at it there, and then you can get your hands on a copy once it hits distribution, because it certainly will. It had a heck of a Kickstarter campaign. The final game that I demoed anyway in the exhibit hall was over the Stronghold booth. I walked over, I chatted a little bit with Stephen Bonacore, chatted with him how the con was going for them. He was super excited with the success they had with the games that were releasing there at Gen Con, or at Origins, not at Gen Con. He did talk about some of the Gen Con stuff coming up. Stephen's a really cool guy. I love anytime I get a chance to talk to him. He's such a nice guy. He's fun. He's super energetic. Anytime I've ever talked to the guy, he's just got this energy about him that not only is he hyped up for what's going on, but he gets you hyped up for what's going on, and I really love that about his personality. But anyway, sat down at the booth and demoed Pit Crew, which is a new Stronghold game. This is designed by Jeff Engelstein. This is a real-time cooperative racing game that actually puts the focus on the pit crew as opposed to the driver. Most of the racing games that are out there, you're the car on the track or the horses or whatever you're racing, the camels and Camel Up. Divinity Derby's coming out with some fantasy creatures that you'll be racing. But anyway, with Pit Crew, it's a real-time co-op game where you are playing cards out. You've got a little card that represents your car, and you're playing cards out so that you can put the 4 tires on the car, you're fueling the car, you're tuning up the engine, and once you've got your car completed, you can then start rolling a dice. While your opponents are also working with their car, you start rolling a die, and every time you roll a 6, you move your car forward. There's a track in the middle of the table. You move your car forward 1 space on the track for every 6 that you roll, until the people who are working with the other pit crew are done. And once they're done, you stop rolling. You then take a look at the cards that are there, and you suss out some penalties for having things that add up to more than the number on your car. In our case, we played to 27. I think it flips over. There's a 29. There's like a 33. There's some different numbers that add up. And then in the sequence of cards, if you skipped any sequences, because it plays out. If you had let's say you started with an 8, you then have to do either a 7 or a 9 on that 8, and playing back and forth. So you can go one higher or one lower than the last card that was played. But you then go through and you look at any penalties that are there. So if you skipped over any numbers or you went past the number that you needed to add up when you were fueling the car up, anything along those lines cause you penalties that are there. And you also earn some bonuses as well. So if you've played all black numbers or all white numbers on a car, you get some bonuses and get to move your car forward. And it goes until you've played, I believe it's 3 laps around the track is how it proceeds. And then the first car to cross wins. It was a very fun little game. The pit crew aspect of playing the car really quickly, and when I played it, I was playing, we basically had 4 of us playing. It was 2 teams of 2, so you had 2 people drawing cards off of a deck and playing them on the car there, being able to communicate, hey, I don't have this, do you have this number in your hand, and slapping those down. It was really frantic. It definitely captured that pit crew feel of we've got to do this fast so we can get our car back on the track before the other team does. It was very realistic. Jeff Engelstein is I don't know that I'd put him up and say he's one of my favorite designers, but I definitely, whenever I play an Engelstein game, you can definitely feel the intelligence behind the design. He has this knack for creating really elegant designs in terms of streamlined mechanics that meet up with a theme really well and marrying those two things together. So 2 thumbs up for Pit Crew from Stronghold Games, designed by Jeff Engelstein. Check it out when you get a chance. It was a lot of fun. Then, after I left the Stronghold booth, and there'll be more Stronghold discussed in a couple later videos coming up, I got out to the main gaming hall and I sat down and played it wasn't really a final version, it was a prototype of Sigil, Powers of War. This is a game designed by Dustin Crouch, who I've come to chat with over Twitter. This was prior to Origins. Chatted with him over Twitter. He had a Kickstarter campaign for Sigil that unfortunately didn't fund for him. We had a discussion about things he could do to make it a little bit better, talking about kind of trickling out the stretch goals as it goes and some different things. But I finally sat down and actually got to play Sigil with him. Had an absolute blast. Sigil is a kind of hexagonal-based skirmish game that's all card-driven, so you're playing cards out. They're there. You've got these 3-dimensional little mana generators that go out on the board that generate mana, and you use that mana to kick out to summon the creatures that are there. And there's different factions in the game that all have different abilities. I played as a goblin faction that was able to summon some goblin and get a lot of goblins out really quickly there. And he played as a faction that had a lot of angels, so a lot of flying creatures that I couldn't touch. But the object of the game is to get your creatures on the board, get across the board, and destroy your opponent's sigil, or essentially their home base. And each sigil has 20 health points, so you have to really get across there quickly. You've got to build up your own defenses around your own sigil. It's a very unique game. I kind of describe it as almost like HeroScape meets Magic the Gathering. But as you summon these cards and you put these cards on the table, you actually have cardboard standees that go on the hexagonal map. And they all have movement. They all have an attack strategy that determines how many dice they're rolling, a defense that shows how many defense die they're rolling. This was a very cool game. It was awesome to be able to sit down and meet Dustin. Dustin's such a cool guy, and he just, I really wish him all the best with this. I'm going to chat a little bit more about it in my day 4 recap. So look out on the next video, and I'll talk a little bit more about Sigil. There's some exciting things that are happening for Dustin there that came out of Origin. So fingers crossed that Sigil sees the light of day, because I think it definitely deserves to be out there. Graphic design has been revamped by the same graphic designer who did the graphic design of Gloomhaven back here. I believe his name's Josh, if I'm not mistaken. Redid the graphic design on it. The game's absolutely gorgeous. The card design, the graphic design layout on that. Keep your eyes out for Sigil. I also, while I was in the exhibit hall prior to jumping out and playing Sigil, I'm going to back up. When I was in the exhibit hall, I hit a couple of other booths. Forgot to mention those. I popped over and did picked up a couple games that I had backed on Kickstarter, a couple of companies that were offering Origins pickup. So I hit up the Grand Gamers Guild booth and picked up my copy of Unreal Estate. This is a cool little card game where you are working to build the best fantasy district with different buildings that have some different abilities on them. But I got to meet the game designer. This is designed by Jason Slingerland. I met Jason. He was there in the booth, as well as Corinne, who did all of the artwork in the game. Her artwork is just fantastic on there. I mean, you've got this piece, and there's some little pieces on the back of artwork. But I met Jason and Corinne there in the booth, chatted with them a little bit. They both came in and went ahead and signed the inside of the box. Corinne drew a little landscape in there. Very cool. It was a lot of fun. Haven't had a chance to get Unreal Estate to the table yet. Things have been a little hectic since I got back from Origins. I got back and the kids were here, the very next day. So, we've been playing some things, but haven't had Unreal Estate at the table yet. But keep an eye out. I'm planning to do a review of Unreal Estate once it hits the table, because it's definitely a fun little card game, and I had fun with it. Second Kickstarter game I picked up, I jumped over to Gil Hova. Gil Hova, famous for the networks and Bad Medicine. And I picked up Gil's new game, Wordsy. This is a word game where you're basically laying out some scoring cards, numbered 5 through 2, left or right, and then there's 2 letters above each card, and you're basically competing to see who can score the most points from the 8 letters that are on the table. You take those 8 letters, you create a word using any combination of those letters that you can. You can use any other letter in the alphabet, even if it's not on the table, you just don't score points for them. But the way the game works is everybody's looking at the same letters. Once someone has created a word, they grab a sand timer and they flip that timer over. Now everybody else has 30 seconds to come up with a word. Once that timer has run out, hopefully everybody has a word that's there. You score points based on the columns that the letters are in. Some of the more difficult letters to use, like your W and your K and your X and your Z, your Q, are going to score you some additional bonus points. So if you've got a Q that's in the 4-point column, you're going to get 4 points for that, plus the bonus points printed on the card. I think the Q is a 2 extra bonus points. So that Q is going to score you 6 points in that case. But you're going to score up all your points. If the person who grabbed the timer has created the highest scoring point word, they're going to gain some bonus points for end game scoring. If there's someone who has created a word, that hadn't created that word, they weren't the fastest person, but they were able to find a word that scored more in that 30-second window that they had, they get the bonus points. You play through 7 rounds. So once that's done, you discard the 4 cards on the right. So the cards that are in the 2 and the 3 columns get discarded. You scoot the other 4 cards over, so they're worth less points this round. You deal 4 more cards out. So there's now a new set of 8 cards there. And you do it all over again. You do that for 7 rounds. You cross off your 2 lowest scoring words. You add up any bonuses that you got. You subtract any penalties if there were any rounds, because you do take a penalty if you didn't have any word, if you didn't come up with a word by the time that timer ran out. And then person with the highest score wins. Very fun game. I have had a chance to play this one with the kids. The kids are now 14 and 11. My daughters are, and my 11-year-old absolutely loves this game, despite the fact that when she and I, it was the first time I played it, it was just she and I, or just her and I that played it. And I mean, at my age and my little bit bigger of a vocabulary, the first game we played, it was very lopsided score-wise. But she had a blast, and she wanted to play it again. And Gil actually included in the rule book some restricted or some handicapped scoring so that you can kind of offset the skill levels of the players. And so the next time we played, I could only score 4 letters. No matter how long my word was, I could only score 4 of the letters in there. And then we tweaked it as well to where I wasn't able to earn any bonus points either. I don't believe that was in the rules. It was just something that we decided, you know what, I'm going to cross off. I'm not going to earn any bonus points there. If I make a word faster than you and you make one that scores more, you still get the points. And we actually had a game where I only beat her by 2 points because of that handicap scoring. So definitely, if you've not checked out Wordsy, it's a fantastic little game from Gil. Gil designed some great games. I love whenever I see something new coming out. And just for those that aren't aware, there is an expansion coming for the networks called Executives that adds some variable player powers where you actually have a network executive that you're playing as. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Some other gameplay that I got in on here on day 3 on the Friday. I sat down and played Sentient. I showed it in my day 2 video that I'd picked it up, but I sat down and played Sentient with Travis Chance, formerly of Indie Boards and Cards, and now owner-operator of Colossal Games. Sat down and played Sentient with him, as well as with Forrest Bauer of Bauer's Game Corner. And we played a game of Sentient there and had a good time with that, shared some laughs. I'm not going to go too deep into it because, like I said, I've got a review coming later. There's just something that happened. I got to sit down and play something else with Travis. So there's a couple of games I got in with Travis over the course of a couple of days. That was awesome there. And it was cool to meet Forrest as well. I've seen his videos on YouTube. He does a fantastic job. So it was cool to actually meet him in person, sit down and play a game. That was a good time. Once we got done with that, I was leaving the exhibit hall or the main gaming hall. Was going to shoot over to the brewery where the Secret Cabal meetup was going on there on Friday night. However, I never made it to the Cabal meetup. This was something I had intended to do. I 100% was super pumped and excited to get over to the Cabal meetup and meet Jamie and Chris and Steve, although I tell you that Chris wasn't there. But Jamie and Steve and some of the other folks from the Secret Cabal that were going to be there, as well as some of the other industry names that were going to be around. I was looking forward to that, just kind of getting together, having some drinks, playing some games, being in that crowd. But I never made it to the Secret Cabal because as I walked past at the main gaming hall to get out of it the way I went, I walked back past the Dice Tower booth where I'd been working a few shifts to help out the Dice Tower guys with their live streams and with their table, selling some of the promos that they had. But I ended up going by their booth again and chatting with some of the guys to just say, hey, I'm going to head over to the Secret Cabal meetup. But instead of getting to the Cabal meetup, I actually sat down and played Century Spice Road with Tom Vassal, as well as the winner of the Jack Vassal Memorial Fund auction, Joanna. Ended up playing games with them, played Century Spice Road, and I gotta say, first of all, I mean, everybody knows Tom Vassal. Tom's a cool dude. He's he's very cool to hang out with. He's very fun to game with. This was the first time I'd gamed with Tom ever. He was a lot of fun to game with, very much competitive, but not in an in-your-face kind of way. He kept making jokes about, hey, there's no shame in getting up and walking away from the table. If you see you're going to lose to me, and I promise not to talk about it on the podcast. So it was a lot of fun to relate to him. But as much fun as I had playing games with Tom, Joanna, who was the Jack Vassal Memorial Fund that won this auction to be able to do some gaming, and she was all over Origins. You've probably seen pictures from the Pair of Dice Paradise guys. She hung out with Rodney at Watch It Played and did a bunch of things with them. But she sat down and was playing this game with us, and absolutely cool individual. She's her personality, she's fun. She was cracking jokes. She was kind of doing a little bit of trash talking. Just a very cool. I mean, probably one of the nicest people that I met. Throughout my Origins, adventures, if you will. She was probably one of the nicest people that I got to meet and sit down and play games with. That was just there strictly as a fan. She's not a content creator, she's not a publisher, she's not a designer, but just loved. She generally was enjoying her experience, and I think that's what made it so enjoyable. So getting to sit down and play Century Spice Road with them was a lot of fun. Because it was with Tom, it was with Joanna. There was another lady that was playing with us. I want to say her name was Regina. I apologize if I'm butchering that. But she was a lot of fun to play with as well. It was a good experience. I don't regret, as much as I was looking forward to going to the Cabal meetup, I don't regret missing it because I did get to experience this game with Tom and with Joanna and with this other lady, and it didn't hurt that I won. So sorry, Tom, took you down by about 10 points on Century Spice Road. Fantastic game, by the way. If you've not played Century, pick it up. It is a fantastic game. Hey, I've got cubes, I'm trading them for more cubes, and then I'm turning in those cubes for points. It sounds terribly boring, but the game itself is super cool to play. Tom then broke out, I don't really know how to describe this game, a game called Magical Athlete. This is a game published way back when. I don't even know when this was published, probably 03, 04, something like that. Very broken game, but in the absurdity is where the fun is. You basically all have these magical athletes that you draft at the start of the game, and each round you play a card. This is the athlete that I'm playing as with a special ability that, maybe for this round the person in last place wins, or I can go to this space and I can challenge you, and if I win, I get to move ahead 10 spaces and you've got to go backwards, and there's just completely absurd. We had a blast. There were a lot of laughs with it. It was fun to Tom talk about how great the artwork is when it's literally just stick figures. So it was a lot of fun. And I've heard through the grapevine, I believe this game has been picked up and is being reskinned and hopefully with some new artwork and some cleaner mechanics. But I believe it's going to be re-released either later this year or in 2018 by, if I'm not mistaken, Plan B Games. Don't quote me on that. It's just rumors that I've heard that Plan B is going to be putting out basically a reprint of Magical Athlete and republishing it. So that could be fun. Another absurd little game that was a blast there. Also, while I was at the Dice Tower booth, I got to play Sentient for a second time on Friday. This time I played just a 2-player version with Dan King, the Game Boy Geek. He was going through the rule book. I was going to be putting together a how to play video for the folks at Renegade, and was looking for someone to play, and I had mentioned offhand that I'd played it earlier in the day, so I sat down with him and played that. Again, dice placement, roll the dice, place them around a little. It's more card manipulation than it really is dice manipulation, but had a lot of fun playing with Dan and getting to experience playing a game with him. And we then got discussing how, some of the games that he likes to play. And we broke out a trick-taking game that I had received from Kickstarter that I took with me to Columbus. This is a game called Cobras, published by Cardboard Edison, designed by Christopher Zinsley. This is a trick-taking game where you are playing the cards out on the table. It's typical trick-taking, but there's a unique twist in that you are basically... The story is you're chasing cobras out of the town by breeding more cobras. And the way it works is... you have cards in your hand numbered 1 through 13 in 4 different suits, and some of the cards have 1 cobra printed on them, some have 2, some have 3. You do your normal trick taking, and then the winner of the trick gets to cash in any cobra tokens that they have in their little cobra basket, and cash those in for points. Based on the number of cobras that you turn in, determines the number of points. The maximum points you can score at any one time is 21 points for having 7 cobras. You cash in, and you cash in everything that's in your basket. So you cash in 7 cobras, you score 21 points. If you start cashing in 8, 9, 10, you score less points. I think 10 or more cobras, you only get 3 points. So there's a drastic swing if you've got too many cobras that are captured, mainly because it's dangerous, and now you're getting bitten by the cobras. But what happens is the winner cashes in cobras in the basket for points. Everyone who lost the trick, you count up the number of cobras on the cards that were played to the center of the table, and that determines how many cobras have been added in, and then those get distributed as evenly as possible among the players. So if there were 10 cobras and there were 3 losers, each person would get 3 cobras that would get added to their basket, and there'd be 1 cobra left over that would just remain in the table and would get added to the number of cobras in the next trick. You then take the cards that are on the table. Any of the cards that have 3 cobras on them get discarded face up. The other cobra cards just get discarded face down. And that play continues around the table until there are 10 or more 3 cobra cards that have been face up, that have been discarded face up. When that happens, the round ends. Anyone who has cobras left in their basket loses a point for every cobra that they have. So it's possible to get stuck. I mean, there were times where I got stuck with 10 or 11 cobras in my basket and ended up, because you divvy up those cobras that are still in the middle. So everyone who didn't win the last trick is going to lose points. It was a lot of fun. I played that with... Played that with Dan, Game Boy Geek. Played with Stefan LeBeau of To Die For Games. And then a friend of theirs, Justin, was with us as well playing. So the 4 of us were playing. That was a lot of fun as well to get to play Cobras and check that out. I also played Fox in the Forest. I got to play Fox in the Forest with Dan King, and he slaughtered me at that game. We played a couple rounds of it, and I wasn't very good at it, so I've got some learning to do there. But had a lot of fun playing that as well. So a couple of trick-taking games there on Friday night to round out the evening, and then I headed back to the hotel because again, Saturday morning is going to be another early morning. So that was day 3 at Origins, my Friday experience. Before I sign off, I got 2 more shout-outs to do, again, for the folks that supported my GoFundMe campaign to get me to Origins. The first one I want to shout out to, you heard me mention him earlier, Dustin Crouch, designer of Sigil Powers of War, was very generous, reaching out, helped me raise some money to help cover the costs of Origins in terms of the food and transportation and whatnot. But he was very generous. Definitely check out Dustin on Twitter. I'm going to have links down in the description of this video to his Twitter account, his website, information on Sigil Powers of War, so you can check that out, some of the other things that he's doing. Dustin, you're a cool dude. I appreciate the help getting there, and I know there are good things coming, good things on the horizon for you. My fingers are crossed, and looking forward to what you do in the future with Sigil and any games you design in the future. The second shout out I want to give goes out to the team at Chip Theory Games. Chip Theory Games, Adam and Josh Carlson out there. they were generous enough to provide a donation as well to my GoFundMe page. For those that don't know Chip Theory Games, they did their first series of games, Hoplomachus. Fantastic gladiatorial combat games that can be soloed. It can be played, 1 versus 1. You can play it in teams. It's a blast. They've had 3 games in the series. Hoplomachus: The Lost Cities was the first. They did Rise of Rome, and then Hoplomachus Origins that added some additional cities or some additional civilizations to the game. Fantastic games anyway. They just did Too Many Bones, just fulfilled Too Many Bones to their backers. Kickstarter. This game absolutely crushed it for them. It's getting rave reviews from, I gave it a rave review over on the Dice Tower. Their other reviewers are absolutely loving this. I've seen solo plays through over at Ricky Royals doing solo plays. The guys over at Rolling Solo have been doing some solo playthroughs of this. I actually dropped off a copy because the guys at Chip Theory had sent me a review copy to do my review over on the Dice Tower, along with all of the Kickstarter stuff. They sent all that stuff with me, or to me, prior to me receiving my Kickstarter copy. And so when I got my Kickstarter copies, the review copy that Adam and the gang at Chip Theory Games had provided, I sent that, I took it with me to Origins and dropped it off with Tom, and so that he, and I think it's something that Sam's really going to love as well. So hopefully they're getting some plays out of Too Many Bones, and we'll be doing some talks about it, who knows, with it. But I felt like I didn't need 2 copies of it on my shelf. As great a game it is, it's a gigantic box, as you can see back here. And so it took up a lot of space on the shelf, and so I figured, Tom could get some use out of it, do a review possibly as well. So who knows what'll happen there. But the guys at Chip Theory Games are fantastic. What I want to give a shout out there, what I want to point your attention to, though, is they currently have a Kickstarter going right now for their next game. This game is called Trip Lock. The games, Hoplomachus, Too Many Bones, carried a much higher price point. Trip Lock, $22. You can get a game. Fantastic components using the poker chips that they use in all of their games. This is a game where you are taking on the role of, it's kind of a steampunk kind of world, and you're a locksmith. You're doing some lock picking and trying to unlock locks before your opponents can do so. It can be played competitive. I believe there's a co-op mode. There's certainly a solo mode like all of their games have. Definitely jump over to Kickstarter. Again, there'll be a link down in the description of this video so you can check out Trip Lock. It funded in 6 minutes. 6 minutes into the campaign, they were fully funded. They've blown past the $100,000 mark already for a $22 game. So they're absolutely blowing up the Kickstarter. They just released some Kickstarter, some stretch goals earlier this morning before I shot this video, announcing some new Kickstarter or stretch goals that are going to be there. And they're looking to go, get to and pass 200K easily. So definitely check out Trip Lock. Adam, Josh, you guys are crushing it. Thanks again for supporting the GoFundMe page. Friends, that's the end of this video. I've got day 4 and day 5. There's 2 more videos coming in the series. Look forward to chatting with you guys about that. Ask questions down in the comments if you have them. If you have things you just want to say, if you have any questions about anything I may have played, I'll certainly answer those if I'm at liberty to do so. And until next time, I'm the Chubby Meeple. Keep gaming, friends.